usual.
All right, so we're on. And so who are you guys? What am I doing here? What are we talking about today?
I'm Erik. I work as a developer on the Diffix tools, on the DP-ins, Diffix app, and the Diffix API.
Okay. And these are tools for driver developers?
Yes, those are tools for driver developers that have already developed their driver and want to install the driver on the end user's machine. So they're looking for a way to install the driver.
So it's sort of like an MSI for drivers?
Exactly. Like an MSI for drivers.
Okay.
And we deal with MSI, part of Diffix tools deal with MSI technology. So we provide Diffix app, which are custom action DLLs. They help customers to make their own MSI package that includes their driver along with their app and goes into the system to install drivers.
Cool.
So I am Ferdous Rubaiyat. I'm the test owner of Diffix tools.
Okay.
And Diffix tools, as Erik said, it has 3 different components: DP-ins, Diffix app, and the new one is Diffix API, which helps users to write their own application that installs driver using our APIs. And these are very top-level APIs.
So let's talk about that for a moment. I mean, installing drivers, typically what people do is they right-click on an INF file or they use a device manager and they say update driver. It looks for the INF file and does what it needs to do.
Right.
So what you're making is something that's more user-friendly or what? Let's talk a little bit
Correct.
about it.
So when you do like device manager and update driver, basically you need to know, you know that you have somewhere in your disk or CD, you have your driver, right? So you have to locate that folder and go through that and select that driver and hit install, right? So we think, I mean, it's a little more action-oriented. User needs to know more. We want to make it easier. So vendors who ship drivers, they'll use our technology to write installer app that'll take care of these things. That'll just install all the drivers necessary for the devices.
Excellent.
Just take care
And
of
the user
whole
won't have to...
thing. User will not have to interact that much. Yeah.
Excellent.
That's the goal.
So let's talk a little bit about this API. I mean, so if I build a driver, say I'm using, are you integrated with like the user mode and kernel mode driver frameworks at all, or you're a separate tool? So I develop my driver and then how do I use your stuff?
Yeah, I can make a quick draw on the board. Maybe.
Please.
So you can see this as 3 levels. So the first we have dp-inst.exe, which is a very simple wizard which guides the user through the installation. And so dp-inst will do everything. It will find all the drivers that are provided together with dp-inst and will install each one of them and will show a final status page in which the user will be informed if the driver has been installed, if the device can be plugged in because the driver is waiting for the user to plug in a device, or if the installation failed. And the second high-level tool is Diffix app, which is really a set of DLLs which are merged together with an MSI. So they are custom actions to an MSI. So if you have an application that comes together with a driver and you want to use MSI, you can use Diffix app to install the driver on the machine. On the second level, if you don't like, or if those tools are not sufficient to install your drivers, you can use Diffix API, which provide a set of APIs that you can use to install drivers, and those APIs are the same ones that are used by dp-inst and the Diffix app. And so you have, for example, you have an API to install a driver package install. And just to clarify, driver package is an INF file plus the file, plus the binaries that come with it and the catalog file. That is what we consider a driver package. So you have several APIs to install, to pre-install, and to uninstall driver packages.
Okay.
And at the lowest level, you have Setup API, which has been on Windows ever since, which are much more complicated and difficult to use. So that's why we are providing those higher level solutions for driver developers.
Good.
And driver developer that has a driver ready should first start thinking about using DP insta diffix app, and if he finds out that those do not fulfill his needs, he should look at diffix API, and at that last resort he should go over to setup API.
So what are driver developers doing today? What are they doing?
Different ways, probably.
Okay.
In the past, we think they're going to into different kind of random solutions. One is like I have seen like devices that come with CD and then they put a label that says don't plug in the hardware before you install the software. So they basically write their own setup to sort of publish all those infs. If they do it in the right way, they publish their inf, then they ask the users to plug in the device. So setup API then knows how to find the driver.
Okay.
And then does install should have any technology?
Install should actually uses diffix API.
Okay.
Today.
Yeah, that's
you have
right.
the diffix app. You have integrated diffix app into install should.
Excellent.
Yes.
So as a developer, I'm just calling a few methods if I want to do stuff in DF. So for example, when I wanted to write custom install code using an MSI sort of application, I would implement an interface. That was the thing that I did, right? So is this sort of along those same lines? I create a setup package using some tool.
UMDF or KMDF.
You got it. And then I would use your API as, how would I use it in my code?
So you're done. Let's say at that point you're done with your driver. You tested it, right? And it's ready. You know it works. Now it's a deployment. You want how you want to put your driver in the system. That's where we come in.
Okay.
So let's say at the basic level, if you want to use diffix API, then you write your small app that uses our high-level APIs. Just install, and then just call your inf, and then call install. That's it. We'll take care of everything. If there's the device in the system, we'll install it. Install the drivers on the device. If there's none, we'll pre-install and make it ready so that whenever a user plugs in the device, it'll be automatically installed. It'll pick up the drivers. So then in the media, you put your driver and you put your small app along with diffix API DLL, and maybe you like configure the CD so that auto-run just picks up your own small setup app.
Excellent.
So it runs, it calls diffix API, and it installs drivers for you.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about how it works. What's going on inside there?
So the major API is driver package install. Then we have another interesting API that's driver package pre-install, and a third one which is driver package uninstall. We'll write that down here. And so there's three things that happen when you call driver package install. So the first step is, we'll make a line. First step is pre-install, which can be divided into two sub-steps. The first is copying all the binaries on the system. That means if your driver package is on a CD, we will copy the inf, the sys file, and the catalog and all the other files on a location on the operating system that is called the driver store, which is nothing more than a directory with a unique name where those driver files will be stored. That is called pre-install.
Okay.
So we copy the binaries on the system and then we publish them. That means we create an OEM file in the inf directory so that the plug-and-play manager can find your driver when the user plugs in a device.
Excellent.
So those are the two steps: copying the binary and making it available to the system. And the second step of an install is the actual install, which means the user has plugged in a device and the plug-and-play manager tries to locate your driver and it finds your driver and then it installs the driver.
Excellent.
So those are the two major steps on an install, and we can divide it into three steps, like copying binaries, publishing the driver on the system, and installing the driver.
Excellent. So now with drivers, you don't really have that sort of DLL hell reality, right?
Probably not if you use defects tools. So, like Eric said, like pre-install copying binaries to driver store. Like it sounds real simple, but there's a big fact behind this. We cover all OSs: Vista,
Wow.
Server 2003, XP, Windows 2000,
Okay.
all of them. And then Vista has its own driver store technology. We use that, and down level, defects tools creates its own driver store and uses its own technology to maintain the driver store entry. So, what was the question? I missed it.
The possibility of conflicts and versioning.
Conflicts. Okay, so here's another API we talked about: driver package uninstall, which really uninstalls the driver. I mean, it's a big concept we are trying to push. I mean, I think customers don't know that really we can uninstall a driver, right? We really can using this API, and this API is really powerful. It can uninstall, it can pick up the next best driver for your device and install it. It can remove all the sys files and DLLs from the system with the proper flag if you use it.
So let's talk about that. I mean, that's an interesting point. I mean, in reality, it's hard to really uninstall anything on Windows in the sense that, especially things that use a registry. I should preface that with saying that. But you guys don't use a registry for drivers, right? They're just an INF file, a DLL, and something else, and you store that in Win32 directory.
Right,
But
we keep track.
when a driver is installed, it actually creates a lot of registry entries.
It does.
Yes, there's a whole database for drivers in the registry.
So you guys have that extra problem then.
We have that too.
So you have that too.
Yeah, and actually many vendors have requested that uninstall to be clean and to not leave any traces behind, and that's really difficult to achieve.
Well, let's talk about that. Why is that difficult to achieve?
One reason is, for example, drivers install files on the system. When they are installed, several files are copied, let's say, into the System32 directory, System32 drivers directory, and those files are not can be shared by other drivers. So when you uninstall a given driver, you always run the risk of breaking another driver that is not being uninstalled, that the user still wants to keep on the system. And the reason that we don't know if that file is shared is that we don't have any kind of resource counting, or we don't have any kind of counter that keeps track of how many drivers are using a given file.
Interesting.
So at that point, we rely on the judgment of who owns the driver. For example, if the driver installer calls driver package uninstall to remove the driver, he should be aware. He should know if his files are being shared by another driver. Probably, like in most cases, that other driver would be from the same company or from the same developer. So he should be aware that when he's uninstalling and using that special flag to remove all the binaries from the system, that he might be breaking something else.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
And is there any way for him to easily tell? So is there any way? I mean, so you laugh because the answer is no.
Right.
But I mean, it's a good question. I mean, I'm not a driver developer, so my questions may be naive. But how is it that you can't tell that if I have a binary that I want to, can I tell that it's loaded into some process? So in other words, I can't tell that the binary I'm trying to uninstall isn't. It's probably easier to tell that it is being used right now, but not knowing if it's going to be used after it's gone. Some other app wants to use it.
Right. It's really hard.
That's the hard problem.
If I would say, like, most time, you can be pretty sure that the driver is not being used, that the file is not being used, but you can't really be 100% sure. I don't think there's any deterministic way to find out 100% assurance that a given file is not being used or not needed by somebody else.
Okay, but let's talk about that. So if I'm a vendor and I build, say, a driver that is involved with an Ethernet driver, right, or something like that. I actually had a problem with a Vista driver recently that got fixed, which is nice. But it was by a third party. How do you know as a vendor? I mean, you should know as a vendor whether or not you're writing drivers that are going to be shared. Certainly not shared across the system, but shared across your class of devices. right? So when I think of a shared driver, it's really a shared driver across a device of classes that a vendor owns. Because I'm sure we make some shared drivers that
Those
that
are
span
Microsoft
vendors. Exactly. So we have the same problem. In fact, it's pretty hard for us to uninstall our drivers, right? Our shared ones. So I think in terms of like shared libraries and shared drivers, it's the same thing, right?
Yeah, just to be more exact, like shared drivers mean shared system, means shared files normally. So like the driver is okay. Yeah, you can have shared drivers, I think.
Yeah, I think audio guys have that.
Yeah.
I mean, you provide some files, but not. I mean, you never uninstall them because those are shared. And
Okay.
there's no question about uninstalling them.
Yeah.
They'll be shared by many audio driver vendors.
Okay.
So really the problem is confined within the company itself. Maybe they are shipping a newer version or using the same file name. I think in that kind of situation, if you install the new one and the old one is still there, you have the same file name, same sys file maybe. Then you have these two drivers using the same file situation.
Now, do many driver companies? I mean, is there a possibility that I, as a vendor, could just create my own folder and store my stuff in there, separate from everything else, and know that I'm not going to share?
Unfortunately, no. System 32 drivers. That's the ultimate destination for all the sys files.
Okay, that's so the plug-and-play manager doesn't have to like search everywhere.
At that point, you don't have control anymore.
You don't have control.
The plug-and-play manager does what it needs to do.
Cool.
Yes.
So, I mean, to step back to the original point, I mean, driver package uninstall is a leap forward in this process, but as a developer, I still need to know what I'm doing in the sense that I have to do checks before I call it.
Exactly.
Correct?
Correct. Yeah, you don't need to use that flag. I mean, you can get a very good uninstall experience by just using the normal driver package uninstall functionality. You don't need if you really want a clean machine after the uninstall, then you can use that flag. But you should be aware that there might be issues.
Understood.
Yeah, the system has never been like normally people add drivers to the system, they don't uninstall them. Very rarely people do uninstall stuff. And Microsoft drivers, most of the time, they just stay on the system forever.
And which isn't the end of the world. They're small files and they don't get used.
Right.
Yeah, just left behind.
That's
true.
But I know there is a lot of work that's been done in Vista with this whole uninstall story. Right. There's been changes to the registry. There's been changes to the way Windows itself handles this process. It's still not perfect, but that's very interesting stuff. So let's talk a little bit about you guys. I mean, have you been driver developers your whole career? You've been working in kernel world the whole time you've been at Microsoft? Or what got you excited about this stuff?
So, I have been working on performance before I started on drivers. And we really work more on the user side of the driver installation, not that much on kernel. So there's two parts: there's kernel plug and play, and there's user mode plug and play. And we work more on the user mode plug and play, and it's much more about interacting, getting feedback from users, which is very important in that case. So we have a lot of interaction with driver developers in the industry. And we really like to hear what they want. For example, many have told us that they want a clean uninstall, so we are trying to work on that.
Understood.
And
they'd like just a silver bullet. Uninstall.
Right.
No problems.
Right. Like the machine was in state A, then install a driver, then uninstall the driver. They want the machine exactly back as it was before. And that's not easy to do.
No way.
There are several things like it needs architectural support. We need OS support from OS.
You got it.
For example, the service, right?
Yeah.
Services are not like locked, so there's no ref counting mechanism in services. If a driver is coming in putting a service, if another driver comes in with the same service name, maybe a higher version of sysfile, so there's no like tracking mechanism that the newer one came with the newer version. Now you uninstall that, so the newer one goes away and you go back to the old one, like this kind of thing. I mean, it's not really locked down, the service. And then also for the registries, so there are a lot of things, I mean, we need support from like OS level.
Sure.
Nothing we can do directly from our team.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I interviewed the people actually working on that. They're you guys know them. You know Daryl Havens and that whole the group that works with Rob Short, the architects. They're all working on state and all that stuff. It's very interesting. But it's a few snapshots down the road of the OS. But they have made some changes in Vista, right?
Yes. Vista has been improving on that.
Definitely.
Yeah. So the driver store is now inbuilt on Vista. The registry is all the data structures that are stored in the registry were much more public on XP, and people, like you made that question before, how did people install drivers on XP and Windows 2000 and Server 2003? Many often they just blasted the driver in whichever way they wanted on the system. They just directly copied file and set registry keys. And in Vista,
And it worked.
but it broke the state. So we didn't know that those drivers were installed, and we didn't know that a registry key was created someplace, or that the file was copied to another place. So we were out of the loop, and therefore that was another difficulty in providing a clean uninstall, that people just could put stuff on the machine.
Absolutely.
Right, and so on Vista we are protecting those structures more, and people should use the APIs. They should use the diffix API. They should use the diffix tools, and they should use our other APIs that we have, like update, driver for plug-and-play devices, setup copy, OEM, inf, and our APIs that we have, so that as long as they go through our channels, we are able to change the system underneath it and improve the installation and installation experience.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And that's what they've been asking for. Now, have you been getting feedback? How closely do you work? You said you work with driver developers. How closely do you work with driver developers in the design of your API? You're giving them what they want, right?
Right.
It's one thing to say, here, use this because we need you to use it because the underlying structure of the system is, designed in such a way that it's very difficult for us to know what's going on when you try to uninstall something where we weren't involved at all in the installation process.
Right. Yeah, we don't want to break. If people install drivers and they have, in the past, when they have directly accessed our data structures, we don't want to break them, and that means it's very difficult for us to change anything because we don't know exactly what people did. And so in that sense it becomes hard to do changes because we don't want to break what's already been done. On Vista we are locking down those data structures so they're not accessible anymore directly. So anyone who's trying to directly copy files or changing registry keys, he will really have a hard time, hopefully.
Interesting. Well, that brings up an excellent point because remember, let's say I built a driver for XP, and I decided to use my own nifty setup mechanism, and now I want it to work on Vista. So there's the whole compatibility issue because now I'm going to have to basically take away my setup code and use the DivX API. Right?
Correct.
I mean, that's what I'm going to have to do.
Yes.
So, and you've been working with compatibility issues for driver developers, I would imagine, for the past few years.
We have, yes.
And what's the feedback for your guys' work? They psyched, or?
Well, on Windows 2000 XP and Server 2003, we really try hard to keep the diffix API backwards compatible, and so. Your default installer will work on XP, of course. If it worked before, on Windows Vista, if you try to do something that is non-standard, like blasting files directly on the system, that probably will not work on Vista.
Okay.
And that's the intention. I mean, the benefit of not allowing this is that we control that we are in the loop, what is happening, and that we can provide a better install and uninstall experience.
Excellent. Very good.
Yeah.
Cool. So you guys work together pretty closely, right?
Yes.
Developer and test.
Yes.
And so you're finding bugs and trying to break his code, and then you're fixing the bugs that he finds and
all the time
arguing with him. It's not a bug. I remember that process. That's cool.
Right.
So what else do you want to get out there? I mean, how can driver developers contact you guys? And do you have a blog? How do you interact with the public about this information?
I think most likely we do several. We use several channels. One is the WinHack. It's a big conference. We have sessions like Ask the Expert sessions,
Right.
where we meet with the driver developers. They ask their question, problems, issues, and the finding. We get a lot of feedback in WinHack time. Also, we have defects email alias where people send questions, having any troubles, we troubleshoot them or answer their questions.
We could post that on the threads.
We can post them. And then recently, I think last month we have a news group or news channel set up.
We have a news channel, right?
Okay.
So people post questions there. I haven't really seen much activity recently on that. Probably it's just getting traction day by day.
Sure.
So yeah, people will post questions or problems. We answer them there.
Excellent.
And some like large vendors like Intel and HP, they have direct contact with our PM, program manager, and some of them we know they're developers. They send email directly to Teresa, and yeah, we work with them like closely with their own problems.
Excellent.
Try to solve them as quickly as possible.
And so they're liking what you've done, I'd imagine.
I hope so, yeah.
Good.
It reduces a lot of burden. I mean, if you think of the previous experience and previous work they did, like Erik was saying, copying all the files to driver directory,
Or using
the
setup
registry,
API.
or even using the setup API. It's a lot of work. It's just the first remove all this code, and if you get around that problem, if you can go past that, it's a very small amount of code you need to do coding, really small amount.
That's
just
excellent.
to install a driver using defects API.
Beautiful.
Currently, we know the HP, they're using that, and what is the video? ATI, they're using defects API, and they send us feedback regularly, and they're pretty happy with that.
Excellent. Well, that's cool. It seems to be what's happening with, and we've been covering it in this little series sort of thing we're doing here on Channel 9 with the driver people such as yourselves.
Yes.
You're really abstracting away the
Right.
complexity,
Exactly.
but you're doing a lot of the brain surgery for people,
Exactly.
which is a
Right.
great model, and that's the case throughout all of our tools across all ways to write applications on
Yes.
Windows,
Correct.
regardless of what they are. So that's awesome to see it
Yes.
happening in drivers.
That's good, yeah.
You have a really hard problem, though,
Yeah.
because it's so complex.
Yes.
The user just sticks their device in, but in reality, that's launching several complicated processing going on inside the system with a whole number of potential problems.
Right.
So it's nice to see that you're making it easier for the developer who writes the code to drive that device. Make it easier for them not to blue screen the system and hang, etc. Very cool.
Yes.
So anything else you want to get out there about this API?
I think one benefit that I remember right now is that it makes driver migration a lot easier. So when you upgrade, for example, from XP to Windows Vista, because we have all those drivers in a driver store, we can easily migrate them. We can easily find them. We can find the who package, and we can pull it over to Windows Vista. So that the devices that are attached to the system on XP go on working on Windows Vista. And Windows Vista has the same benefit. So if you upgrade from Vista to Vista, or let's say whatever comes after Vista, then all the drivers will be in the driver store, and we can easily migrate them.
Excellent. That's clearly
That's a
the
new
upgrade case.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
Yes.
Because it's always a bummer. And I've also noticed some great things when I upgraded from XP to RC1. I wanted to do that test rather than the typical clean install. I noticed what was really nice was during the installation, I was informed of what devices may not work anymore, which has never really been the case. And in fact, I could print it out from the setup UI, which was really cool.
Yes.
And that really helped me out a lot to know what devices I may have problems with, as opposed to it just doesn't work. And then Vista does a great job of telling you this probably isn't going to work. You want to try it anyway? And are you guys involved with that part? I mean, this isn't going to work. I mean, that's a plug and play sort of system, right?
Yeah, we were involved in a part that reassembles the driver on XP. So those drivers who are not in the Diffix driver store and who are not on a device pass is a directory that many vendors provide where they put their drivers. And if the drivers cannot be found on the system, if the whole driver package cannot be found, we reassemble the driver. So we have been involved in that part. That means we find all the bits and pieces that are scattered on the system, the sys file, the other files, and try to pull them together and rebuild the driver package that originally existed when the driver was installed. And that has been working pretty well too.
Excellent.
But it's a kind of ad hoc method, and we only can reassemble the partial driver package. So it's really much better when we have the whole driver package in the driver store, and that's what we are going to have on Windows Vista. And that we have down level when people use the Diffix tools.
Great.
Yeah,
Very cool.
There's the big assumption behind this is, or the big issue behind this is, all the drivers we're trying to migrate, those were specifically written for XP. So the issue is they may not work in Vista because of architectural changes, maybe in video, maybe in audio. We do our best effort, but yeah, because basically those drivers were written for XP, we have to like acknowledge that they may not work on Vista because.
And of course, I mean, we've been working with driver vendors for years now during the course of developing Vista to make sure and help them get drivers that will work on Vista. And so there's still work to be done in that area. I mean, ideally, a user would love to be able to upgrade their operating system and have all their devices work. End of story.
Right.
I mean, that would be nice.
Yeah.
But the operating system can't fix that for you necessarily.
No.
But I like what you guys are doing. It's very cool. And it seems like your API is pretty straightforward, easy to use.
Very straightforward.
Very straight.
And let me ask you this: I mean, since you're running up in user mode, I could play with this from managed code, right?
Right.
Interop.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You can.
Very cool.
Yeah, trust me, I tested it.
Nice.
I have managed code, managed interface to test these APIs.
Beautiful.
And they work fine.
Nice, because then you could have your nice UI.
Yep.
Right, write an installer in WCF or no, what is it? WPF. Sorry.
Okay.
And have a beautiful install UI and just call into this stuff. Anyway.
But you have to write the wraparound.
Yeah,
Right.
you just have to know how to platform in Folk. So just call our APIs from your managed code.
Beautiful. Great. Well, great job, you guys.
Yes.
Psyched about this. And we'll get this up on Channel 9, and hopefully you guys will get some feedback. You'll join Channel 9.
Yes.
Right? Answer some questions on 9.
Yes.
That would be nice.
Yes.
There's a lot of developers that come there. So, excellent. Thank you for your time.
Yes.
Great work, man.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.